And welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Take TV. We are well and truly into the AFL finals, and we're going to be covering the games just gone, tips for up ahead, the players that kind of caught our eyes as potential Supercoach options for next year, as well as going through finals, footy fantasy, and so much more. But joining me, as always, is George and Enno. Boys, how are we going today?
And someone
Very
else,
well.
Dean. The great man, yeah.
Oh, what? Where did that come from? Bit of Hasbulla, where did he come from?
I don't know. I bought one for my mate because he loves him, and so I thought I might get myself one for a gag as well. So it's just a gag until it's not, pretty much.
Consider me tickled. Now, got to apologise in advance. Enno and I have had very big days. It's the start of the NFL season, week 1 kickoff. So I was up at 2 a.m., went Monza, Formula One, into 12 hours of NFL, which is great. Vikings got up, fantasy teams doing pretty well. Enno, you must be pleased, Giants got up as well. But we're struggling at the end of a Monday. It is rough. George, you got amongst it this year. Have you actually got a team for NFL?
I was about to say, we all went 3-0 collectively. If he's still a Chiefs fan, I don't know.
He's a bandwagoner, isn't he? Yeah.
No, family link, been to Arrowhead, can say that, got the gear as well. So yes, Chiefs got up, Mahomes 5 touchdowns, very nice. But I also had a massive night. You guys stayed up. Well, I stayed up to 2 a.m. to watch League of Legends regional finals. So I'm struggling just as much as you blokes.
I didn't know that.
So that was important that you got that one in, JD, but we'll let that one slide.
Who got up? The local favourite?
Like you know anyone. G2 lost 3-0.
I know the esports teams. So G2 lost.
Yeah, they got swept.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right, moving swiftly along then. Let's go over the games from the weekend. So we saw Brisbane upset, I would say, Melbourne getting over the line. Their first win at the MCG in 7 years, or whatever it was the big storyline. You obviously also had the petty Zorko stuff, which didn't really translate into anything in the game, which is probably for the best. And what was interesting was they decided not really to go hard on tagging or addressing Lachie Neale, which I thought was really interesting. We saw them do it to great effect with Harms earlier in the year. Whereas Lions obviously sent Berry to Oliver in the second half, and that was effective, somewhat in kind of limiting his output on the game, as well as, just generally frustrating him and taking attention away from other things. But what stood out to you two as the game kind of unfolded?
Melbourne don't have a forward line.
Melbourne do not have a forward line. That is definitely a big talking point out of the game. It was shocking.
I
was calling for Tom McDonald to come back, and they didn't, and they paid.
I think it's not just the forward line. I thought their run off halfback was non-existent. Mostly because I was watching Salem. Salem's 380k next year, and I'm thinking, do I want to pick this guy? Obviously, a whole preseason ago, but he didn't. The best fantasy halfbacks, they call for the ball. Dawson, he calls for the ball. Sicily calls for the ball. Stewart, he wants the ball. Salem did not. I didn't even see him. I didn't know where he was. He didn't call for the ball. I don't know. Was he on the bench a lot? I don't know. But the run off halfback was non-existent. Usually you see Hunt. Hunt's pretty low possession guy, so I didn't see much of him either. The ball. I generally thought for them to score, they had to win it through the midfield and get it in. Then Cosby will get one at the back or something like that. But no run, slowish ball movement. Didn't really see it. Very efficient ball use through the middle. So I guess when they clamped Oliver, Petrarca's injured. Berry got on top of him in the midfield. Game over, I think, from there. So, Melbourne can bounce back next year. I think, go back to the drawing board. I was listening to David King today, and he was just saying, Melbourne, they didn't really change anything. They didn't really change the defense mix. They didn't really change the midfield mix. They did throw Angus Brayshaw in, I guess. And they didn't really change the forward mix. I think they got the young small forward, Jacob Van Bruin or something like that. Could have brought him in. He's been doing all right. But, they didn't really make any moves. The run from halfback was not there. And, the forward line, as you guys said, wasn't very good. But I guess this was the concerns watching Melbourne in the second half of the year, because we thought they turned a corner. But in that game against Brisbane, where they win by 10 goals, so sort of wrote Brisbane off. didn't even like, oh yeah, tip Melbourne, easy tip. Nah, no good. So yeah, credit to Brisbane though. They played well, and Melbourne did not.
Well,
I
I
think-
think they did for a half, right? I thought they should have been up by more at half time. They weren't. That was their own fault. Well, they gave away 3 goals with 5 seconds to go, like every fucking quarter.
Yeah,
They had 2 last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they
it
don't
was just
happen.
so
They're up
bad.
by 5 or 6 goals. Maybe Brisbane don't have the belief that they could do it, but they obviously did. And they just pants in the second half. I think it was like 70-point second half. So you can't be giving that up. And I've talked to mates about it before. They can't kick a score. They can't. They need to kick 90, 100 points to win games, and they aren't doing it. They can only kick 60, 70. So
I think what's interesting as well is if you look at the composition of their goals. So Neil Bullen, Langdon, Pickett, and Fritsch all kicked 2 goals each. So they're small mediums. We find like Melksham kicked a goal as well. They're talls. They didn't kick anything. Luke Jackson, nothing. Ben Brown, nothing. Gorn didn't kick anything. I mean, I know he's playing mainly ruck, but you just look at like where their goals coming from. Their talls are non-existent, and it's just a really big weakness. So it's going to be interesting to see how they address that over the off season and whether or not they actually pick up someone to fill in that role. A couple of talking points from the game before we move on. So the Jake Lever play at the end looks like it probably was a free, but just kind of funny him doing his little dance move, and then the 50 against. The 50 against is the unforgivable one because like they're yelling at you to give it back. It took so long.
yeah, maybe a sneaky chance still.
Exactly. Well, they were. They had all the
whatever.
momentum up until that point. And this is the thing. Like we talked about the first week as well. Melbourne, in that first loss, they kept killing their own momentum. They gave away 50s, if you remember. They gave away 2 or 3 50s that resulted in goals, and that killed their own momentum against the Swans every time they were mounting a comeback. And same thing again, like just undisciplined play, killed their momentum, just shut them out of the game. And then the other thing quickly, so we don't know the results of the tribunal appeal for Berry at the moment, but how did you guys see that? Did you think it's worthy of a week?
Nah. Stuff it. Let him play.
Not sure. Well, I think Oliver had his like elbow near his face, and Berry was kind of just like trying to get him off him, but at the same time, probably went for the eye.
If you're on the ground, you ain't got much to work with. You got a bloke on top of you.
Yeah, he was pinning him. He was pinning him with his arm, but you don't go for their eyes. All right, I think
But sometimes it's with the force and the pressure. It's
yeah.
I don't think it's intentional, so I think he should play.
I think if it's intentional, you give him a week. If not, then no.
Yeah,
simple as that.
And I think they'll be fine. I think there's others they can show the footage of that didn't get a week, so I think he'll get off.
And
Worth noting one more.
Worth
noting one more thing on Dane Zorko. I thought his leadership was actually quite good because the previous games, leading up into the finals, the first final, he was just acting like every time he got aggravated, he'd fight back, scrap on the floor, nearly get suspended, give away Dumfries. I think he had one moment this game, but he cut that out of his game for the most part. So I thought that was probably important.
And then just quickly, last little note, like we talked about Wilmot last week as someone that looks like a rookie option for next year, and that definitely was the case again. So yeah, keep an eye on him for next year. The other game was Collingwood Fremantle, which saw Collingwood really lead out of the gates quite well early. They brought that same pressure they had in the Geelong game, but Freo just couldn't really stand up to it, to be honest. And the Pies kind of controlled the game from there on out. It was weird because the scoreboard kind of has it as close, but if you watch the game, it really wasn't. It's only like junk time that they kind of got back in it. You still had, Brayshaw, Sarong, and Young doing well from the Freo side. I thought Akers was all right as well. Brody was missing, not unsurprisingly. And then I just thought really well-rounded effort from the Pies. I will note that DeGoey top scored on Supercoach with a 136. So that's a 136 and 145 back-to-back weeks, which is about, I think, the total points I had from 5 weeks of him in my team. So thanks for that. And then Crisp was one which I know you wanted to talk about, George. He looked to be moving and playing a little bit better than previous weeks. So what did you see there, and what did you think about the game overall?
The kicking was still not good from Crisp, but he started handballing a little bit more in the second half, which was better. But yeah, he just looked on the eye. He wanted the ball, whereas previously he just wasn't getting the ball. We saw him go for how he was rebounding last year. That's probably one of the reasons why I picked him as well. In the preseason, he was doing that run and carry from the back half, even playing through the midfield. So we saw him do that a few times, and didn't really get that in the second half of the year. Maybe he just needed a week off, but no longer relevant if he's mid only. So I liked his game, and he's going to be important because I think Collingwood's midfield. I think Pendlebury, I'm looking 15 contested. Tagoe probably best on ground. And yeah, Tagoe, he's so good to watch when he's on, but it doesn't happen often enough. So he's going to be very important against the Swans, where I believe he didn't play last time. So yeah, I liked Collingwood's game. It was just a standard Collingwood game. I thought they move the ball so well. They work so well as a team. I think the forward line is really, really good for Collingwood. I guess they're missing that one key target, but a few mediums there, a few smalls that do really well. They get it in there quick, and they generally use it pretty well. So I thought it was just a standard Collingwood game. The crowd gets involved. They kick up the first 2 or 3. The crowd goes absolutely nuts, and then it's pretty hostile for Freo. So Freo didn't really stand a chance, I thought, after the first 5-10 minutes. So I think Collingwood, they're a very good team. I give them a good chance against Sydney.
Yeah.
Anything set out to you on the Freo side, or should we move on?
I just would say Melbourne maybe learned from Collingwood that they were up early and then they controlled the game in the second half and didn't let Freo back into it. I know, really late, they kicked a couple, Freo, but as you said, 20 points probably flatters them. It was a much bigger margin, and Collingwood probably could have kicked straighter in the middle parts, and it could have been a bigger margin. But yeah, I just think Melbourne could probably learn something from that because the D's again going back to that game with 30 points up, and really you shouldn't be losing too many games from there. I've watched 5 of them probably this year from my own team, but if you want to be with the best teams, you shouldn't be losing them, and that's sort of good for Collingwood. It shows they can sort of win in any way. Even being up, early, they've managed to hold on and sort of just, as I said, control the game completely.
Freo's forward line were just total bots. They had no chance.
Yeah, I think similar games really in teams. Like Freo's forward line, no Tabiner. It's like watching Melbourne really as well. The entries, it's bad.
Yeah,
it's hard to watch.
Yeah, having watched a team with no forward line play for many years, it's triggers the PTSD where you just look so good up until the point where you enter inside 50, and it's just hopelessness and despair, and you just know it's never going to end.
And it's both entries and it's the forwards. It's both really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, not good. All right, shall we quickly move over to some finals footy fantasy before we then preview next week's games? George, would you like to start us off with how you did last week?
Not great. I had Salem and May instead of Coleman and Rich. So I'm probably about 100 points behind everyone else. So overall rank of 818, weekly rank of 1830, weekly score 1583. So not the best week. Did captain Andy B. How'd you boys go?
So I scored 1638 for the week, which was a weekly rank of 954. I'm 391st overall, so I think I moved slightly down. Also had the Andy Brayshaw captain. I pretty much nailed the mids because I had Sarong as well. May in the back line hurt, and then I had a bunch of bad forward choices again. So not getting like a and B, or not having Common back were probably the 2 big ones. Eno, how about yourself? I think you had a good week, didn't you?
I've had that. Well, I made the team 10 minutes before. Someone reminded me in the Discord that it was on, and I was like, oh, crap. And so I just, I mean, I can't see the team. It's disappeared. But 1691 I scored, and I think that was 250th for the week. So moved up because I think I had a terrible week 1. I'm 900th now. So look, we're only obviously going for the 1 week wins now. We're not going to win it. So got to try and just get the weekly in the next 2 weeks. I can't remember who had the captain on, to be honest, but I had the same mids, both Freo mids and Neil and Oliver and all that sort of thing. So I don't know. It gets a bit weird now with, only, less teams to pick. Although I guess it's 4 again this week, but grand final will be definitely weird.
Yes. Oh, I mean, just it feels like you're going to have a lot of very similar teams. There's going to be 1 or 2 picks. It'll be different around the fringes. All right, before we preview next week's game,
hang on. We got this. Have you guys? We'll speak about the team. Some good picks for this week for finals footy fantasy.
Okay.
Hot tips. So I guess you want to have a bit of fun. Pick some big game players. Forward line is make or break. I like Mason Cox as a pod. We saw him a bit clanking a few, do the strut, grab the ball with one hand after he marks it. So I like Mason Cox, but we also got a few good options. We got Heaney, Cameron, Gordon, Hawkins, Bailey. So that can probably round out your forward line. Also, you could go like a Stinger or something. So do like that. And then in the midfield, probably load up on the Swannies mids, and in defense, probably pick anyone you want. But worth noting, Ryan Clark might tag Nick Dacos. So I thought I'd add that just quickly. So yeah, I've sorted my team and hopefully get the weekly. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, definitely targeting Swans mids, trying to field as fewer Collingwood players as possible, just not fantasy friendly players. And then
Pendle's in.
No,
they're all mid only though. It's a problem. Like, is the Goey mid only?
Yeah.
You can't have them. Too hard.
Yeah, they're gonna drop like 80s or low 90s. I'm good.
Callum captain this week.
For sure. Callum captain. Okay, I was gonna transition actually before we did anything more, George, into a word from our sponsors this week. You may have heard of them before.
Yes, we are sponsored by Manscaped, and they have their premium package 4.0. So this contains the Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker nose hair trimmer, the Ultra Premium Body Wash. Get this Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. So the science is incredible. They've got the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. So summer is coming up and you get rashes and stuff. Manscaped have got you covered. The Bowl Spray Toner. That sounds fantastic. The Anti-Chafing Boxes. And also you get a nice travel bag that you can take with you when you go wherever overseas now that COVID is barely a thing anymore, I think. Also, Manscaped are selling aluminium-free deodorant. So aluminium, check your deodorants if they contain aluminium. It is very bad for you, can change your hormones and stuff like that, according to Google.
But I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, just as Google said that, not me.
Yeah, if you couldn't tell he wasn't a doctor, he led with Google said.
But yes, it's worth looking into. Aluminium deodorant is not good, but Manscaped have aluminium-free deodorant. So make sure you check that next time you buy deodorant, or you could just go to Manscaped and get it there. So that's what we got from there, boys. Get around.
Excellent. Well,
code FTTV 20% off.
Wow, fantastic. And you know what? If you'd been booking flights to some of the games this week, then you definitely could use that 20% off. Because on Friday night, we have the Swans Collingwood game up here at the SCG, 7:50 start time on the Friday. And that looks like it'll be a ripper. I think these are both probably the two best pressure midfields of the teams that are left. George, you've kind of already mentioned that there could be some strategic moves going on here with Clark potentially going to Dacos. Just looking across the rest of the ground, have you guys kind of got tips on who you think is going to win and why?
What's fixtures you look at, JD? Yours are always stuffed, mate. This is the Saturday Arvo game.
Is it seriously?
Geelong Brisbane Friday night.
Really?
Well, please, whatever website it is, delete it. Yeah, legit.
Fan footy. They just haven't updated it. Sorry, it's not a shot at old Monty, but if I'm looking at stats. Oh wow.
Yeah, right.
I've been stitched up again. I don't know why. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's start with the Saturday afternoon game, the game everyone's talking about. 4:45 at the SCG up here in Sydney. By Swans. Just made me. Who have we got tipped and why? Actually, how'd you go on tips last week? Were you 1-1? I think we're all 1-1, right?
Yeah, 1-1.
Yeah.
I'll tip Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so Swans, Pies, we'll finally get to it. Who have you got and why?
I'll go Sydney. Collingwood's midfield have stood up. De Goey, Pendlebury played well. Chris played well. So I think it's important they stand up. against the Swans. If they get on top, I think the Swans' scoring power is too heavy for them. But you can't really count Collingwood out. So, yeah, I go the Swans. I just think too much scoring power. And then defense are probably a bit more sound than Melbourne at the moment, down back. So, yeah, I'll go for the Swans. And Isaac copped a knock last time. He'll be fit and firing, ready to go, and kick 4.
Yeah, I think everything that Collingwood bring, Sydney bring it, but with more talent and more polish. So I think they just like that intensity that Collingwood bring, that sort of, upset Geelong a bit, upset Freo. I think Sydney can cope with, and then I just think they have more talent across the board. But as you said, you can't count this Collingwood team out. They've got all the way to the Final Four. So, look, yeah, I can definitely see them getting up. But there was a game, obviously, a month ago up there, and Sydney sort of controlled that for the most part. So, based off that as well, I'd be tipping Sydney. But, yeah, not surprised if Collingwood win like I kind of was that Brisbane beat Melbourne or what have you. So, that I wouldn't be surprised at with this game if the Pies did get up. But I'll tip Sydney.
Yep, and boringly, I'll probably also tip Sydney for this one. I think, to your point, it just feels like Sydney's the slightly better version of the Pies, with the exception that obviously Pies have won a lot of these close games and kind of been able to hang in there. I did like how they responded, on the back of last week with Fly saying, we're not losers, don't act like it. Yeah, I really liked how that, actually, they rallied around it and came back this week. Yeah. I think the other thing that stands out is of the final 4 teams, Collingwood actually hasn't beaten any of the teams that are left. So I don't think that's good odds for them from here on out. And I think Swans are too good. The only other thing though is this having the week off before this game seems to be the disadvantage. I think the win rate's only 40% on these teams, where it used to be in the 90s before the bye week was introduced. So I do worry that the Swans come out kind of lacking some of that fire that a pretty hardened Pies team will, that's just in the zone. So I think there is a chance that the Pies jump them early and maybe do what they did to Freo again. But based on what we've seen this year, I'd probably have to tip the Swans. And then quickly over to the Cats Brisbane Lion game, which is 7:50 p.m. at the MCG on the Friday.
Yeah, you got it right.
Yes, thanks.
That's a GMHBA actually, but nah. It's at the G.
Don't do that to me. Don't do it to me. So the Lions have finally broken the MCG voodoo, but can they do it in back-to-back weeks, George?
Yes.
That's right. You're number one cat hater. He's the number one cat hater.
I don't hate the Cats. Okay. People say I hate Chris Scott. I hate the Cats. No, I just think they are overrated. And
people don't say that. You say that. There's chat logs.
You show evidence.
They're such a great club that they fail in the finals every year. We saw in the first final that they played no good. They somehow won. I don't know how. But yeah, I just think they're overrated organization, and they got bailed. Collingwood kicked a few high balls in, and then just randomly Rowan and 10 people around the pack, Rowan and Jeremy Cameron started clunking a few. So really poor entries. They probably got away with a win there. So I'll be tipping Brisbane. I think Brisbane believe. The pressure has been on them for the last few years because they've been there for many, many times. But now this time, I think the pressure was off. People wrote them off. They believe. I think Joe not playing and then Big O going down probably helped their forward line structure a little bit. It let Big Hipwood play pretty well. So I wonder how that will go, but I think Brisbane can get him in the midfield. Probably Blitzarves goes to a Neil or something, see how that goes. But I do like Brisbane in this matchup. I think the defense has been okay. Harris has been playing a little bit better. And yeah, Geelong probably have less big game players than Brisbane, which I know Brisbane haven't done that well recently in the finals, but I think Neil will stand up. I think McLuggage has come into his own. I think the forwards have gained a bit of confidence and probably see another masterclass of diving from Dangerfield. So I'm tipping the Lions.
I know.
Got
How
it
do
all
you
out.
feel about it?
Got all it out. Look, yeah, I actually wouldn't be surprised either, which is obviously not a tip, but I think Brisbane, as you said, probably believe after that win, big win against Melbourne, as you said, the hoodoo off the back, the G. Geelong aren't an MCG tenant, so obviously that helps as well. But simply, it's probably the best forward line in the comp. Like, I think Richmond scored the most points, but I would have it probably as Geelong for the year against probably the worst, defense left in the comp, and Brisbane just haven't been able to defend at all. And look, Demons aren't a good forward line, so that wasn't too much of an issue for them. But they gave up 100 against the Tigers the week before. They've been giving up 100 a lot all year, and I think it'll be if they're going to win, it's going to have to be another shootout like the final against Richmond, I believe, because I think Geelong are going to score fairly easily, and Brisbane is just going to have to keep up, really. So, famous last words, like Joey Montagna said before the Richmond-Brisbane final, and he said it's going to be a dour affair, and then it was a shootout. But I think, well, if Brisbane are going to win anyway, that's what it's going to have to be. But I'll tip in Geelong by maybe like 30 points.
Excellent. Yeah, wow. Sorry, Geelong by 30, did you say?
Yeah.
I definitely more lean your way. So I'll take Geelong here. I think you guys have kind of mentioned both the talking points I had for why as well. So Brisbane have operated well the last 2 weeks when their forward line has had one less tall in it. So week 1, McInerney went down early, McStay got moved into the ruck, and then you had Hipwood and Danaher there, and they functioned kind of well as a duo tall towers. And then last week you had Danaher obviously as the out. And yes, they brought in Fullerton, but really it became kind of Hipwood's forward line, and Hipwood and Mistay kicked like 6 between them. But other than that, we haven't really seen the three of them work together well in the tall forward line. Maybe they just need a bit of momentum, and that'll be enough to carry them through. And actually bringing the third tall in won't be a problem, but based on what we've seen, it looks like it might be. And then secondly, Brisbane Lions defense has not been good this year, especially the talls have been quite poor. Harris Andrews has had his moments, but outside of that, they've been pretty easy to score on for the most part. I can see the Cats with them, superstars basically up front, really tearing them apart. And if there was one team that would benefit from the week off, it does seem like it would be Geelong. Older list, you had a few of the guys kind of pretty banged up, like Mitch Duncan, Dangerfield, Cameron, Hawkins. So, them having the week off, you could actually see some benefit where other teams may lose momentum. So, Geelong was my tip to win the whole thing, so I'm not changing tact. I'm still on with them. George, I think you were Swans, weren't you?
Yeah, and I was the D's and the out and straight set, so.
Yes.
You're in every single Channel 7 expert.
Me?
No. Everyone tipped the D's, didn't they? I got tricked
did they?
by the Brisbane game. Got tricked.
9 out of 10 had Melbourne.
Yep.
One had Melbourne runner-up.
Was Dermy, wasn't it? Was he?
Yeah, it was Dermy.
Geelong?
No, he had Geelong.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and you can see why, because it looked like everything clicked and everything just worked well. And, Brisbane...
Round 23 got tricked.
Yeah.
I wanted to say Sydney for that game. I just thought Melbourne would win that game. And then, after they lost the quali, then I'd probably, if I would obviously swap your tip, you could. But, that game was so important to shape the finals. Like, if the D's are sitting here with a home prelim, I'd probably still be tipping them for the flag, but they're not. They too many.
Well, who are you tipping now then?
Sydney.
Yeah. And I think that Swans Collingwood game is the one to watch this weekend. That's the one that I'm really excited and keen for. I think the Geelong.
I think if Collingwood pull it off, they can beat Geelong because they gave them troubles. Like, I guess there's upside with Geelong. They played terrible, but was it because of Collingwood or did they just play terrible? Like, they were pretty bad in that first final. So there's upside there, but maybe it was because of Collingwood's pressure.
I think this is Geelong's biggest fear is playing either Sydney or Collingwood.
Correct,
in the final,
they both bring
because they both bring the pressure, which then limits the upside of their forward line, where other teams just don't bring that same pressure. All right. Is there anything else that you boys wanted to cover off before we close out for the week? Keep it short and sweet.
Short and sweet. This is half an hour. Amazing. Imagine if we could do this during the season.
It would never happen.
Impossible.
It just wouldn't work. Work.
No. Well, there's no Will Brody to talk about, so we might get an extra 5 minutes every week next week.
Underrated Jack Mr. Underrated, apparently. How many weeks in a row do you have to call him underrated before he's underrated? Is it hit the mark yet? Or he won last year's BNF, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's so underrated, man."
Oh, and
Go on.
don't AFL play ratings have him as like a top 10 player? Who's underrating him? Like, what
Everyone's
is this?
overrating him. That's what's happening.
Crazy. All right. Well, thank you everyone once again for joining in. It's been a pleasure having you. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for your time. Or podcast if you're listening to it on audio. We will see you next week. Otherwise, best of luck with your finals footy fantasy, your tips and all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time.